yhctower here, and on a very recent video I asked for some feedback on what you would like to see on the channel in the future, and I kind of talked about ways you can interact with me and give your feedback. And if you've missed that video, I'll put the link here and in the description box below. And I got some really good suggestions, and one that I got was related to all the Star Wars content I produce on this channel. And it's a question I've got in the past, but I've really not thought about doing a video about it. But when I got this request, I thought, maybe this is a good time to do this. And basically it was, what is my recommended reading order for Star Wars books? There's so much Star Wars books in the expanded universe, the old expanded universe, the one that Disney's kind of thrown out, that a lot of people, I'll get questions, you know, should I read this book before this one? But after this last video I made, I got a specific request. Kyle, give me your recommended Star Wars expanded universe reading order. So I thought, why not? So that's what I'm going to go into today. So one of the first things I'll mention, if you're new to Star Wars books, I encourage you to, and one of my favorite features of Star Wars books is actually to open up the front cover and find this little list in here. It's a great element that I love that Star Wars books do, where it basically kind of lists the books, what time period they're in. If you're going to read a series, and a lot of Star Wars series have 6, 8, 10 books in a series, and if you want to make sure you're reading them in the right order, is to go to this list and check where they're at. If you're looking about reading a standalone book and you want to make sure, well, I don't want to read a standalone book set, you know, somewhere where it might mess up the action that I'm currently reading in an established series, you can kind of check to see where the standalone book is. Or if you're unclear, is this book standalone, is this part of series, you can use these lists to kind of check. And also this helps for a lot of people. Some people prefer reading stuff that's set in the Old Republic, stuff set before Star Wars and New Hope. Personally, I've never really got into that, but if you just want to focus on books not out, check the list. I traditionally read books that are set after Return of the Jedi, so you know this list can help you figure out which books are set where in regards to the movies and stuff. So this is a great place to start. So since I mentioned that I do not read really books that are set before Star Wars and New Hope, I really don't have any recommendations on what order you should read those in. So I'm going to focus on the books set after Return of the Jedi. If there's a series I haven't read, I'll just kind of mention that. But basically what I'm going to go over is the series that I have read. I'll basically tell you the order I think you should read it, and how good I thought the series was, and if it's a series I think you can skip without messing up the next series in the lineup. So with all that intro out of the way, let me just get started. So I recommend the first book you read is The Truce of Bakura, or Bakura. I've heard it pronounced several ways. I've been made fun in the past in this channel the way I pronounce it. And I should say, I've never really got into caring about how Star Wars stuff's pronounced, so if I pronounce something and you think it's wrong, it probably is. It's just how I've always heard it in my head. The Truce of Bakura, however, is a standalone book, and its plot really doesn't impact much of the later books, but one reason I like to recommend it is because it is a standalone book, and it'll kind of get you used to how Star Wars books are written. And if you like the style it's presented in, there's a good chance you'll enjoy Star Wars books. If you really don't get into it, there's a chance you might not like it, future Star Wars books, but it's a good starting place. But plot-wise, it's not essential. So it's just, if you have some free time, you'd like to read a Star Wars standalone book, I'd recommend The Truce of Bakura. But I don't consider it essential. The first essential series I think anybody that's interested in reading books after Return of the Jedi needs to check out is the Thrawn Trilogy. And the Thrawn Trilogy is Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command, all written by Timothy Zahn. Heir to the Empire is probably considered the best Star Wars book ever written. This trilogy is probably considered the best of the Star Wars series. It's essential. If you're going to read books after Return of the Jedi, you have to read this series, and I recommend this be the first series you read. One reason why it's so important, not only is it the best series, but so many of the characters who become the main book characters are introduced in the series. Of course, you have all the characters who have established in the movies, like, you know, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, the droids, Chewie, you know, all of them are presented. But you have countless major Star Wars Expanded Universe characters who only appear in the books who are introduced in this series. So for some reason you skip this series and you go to a later series, you're going to be a little bit lost because there's all these major characters who you really have had no introduction to. You don't know their backstory. This is where they're introduced. So you really need to check out the Thrawn Trilogy first. So very, very essential. Perhaps the most essential series of all time in Star Wars books. Next up, after the after the Thrawn Trilogy, the next series I recommend is the Karelian Trilogy, which is Ambush at Karelia, Assault to Salona, and Showdown at Centerpoint. Very good series. Not quite as good as the Thrawn Trilogy, but very good. So I would say this is essential as well. In between these series, if you want to check out, there are some books that were geared more towards preteens. It's the Jedi Academy books. They read more like short novels if you're an adult, but they do introduce some characters, but those are not essential. You can skip over those and you can still understand stuff later on. But if you have some free time and you see them, sometimes you'll see them in collected versions. I do have collected versions. Like this is a collection of several of the series, and it's the Young Jedi Knights. So if you see any of those, they can kind of give you introductions. And basically these are kind of children to the main characters who, as this book series goes on in future, eventually become adults and become major characters in their own right. I'll put that back later. So after the Karelian Trilogy, which is a very, very good series, then you have The Hand of Thrawn, which is a 2-book series, Spectre of the Past and Vision of the Future. I would say this is a great series. Not super essential though. You can skip it and not miss too much, but I would still recommend it. If you're really for just quality, I would say this is a series you need to read. If you're more concerned about, I want to skip some books just because I don't have time to read everything, this is a series you probably can skip and you won't miss too much in regard to, you won't be lost in future series if you skip these 2 books, but they're so good I'd really recommend you read them. Then you perhaps have the series that is the best well-known after the Thrawn Trilogy, and that's the New Jedi Order, and it is a massive series. It is, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, so close to 20 books or so. Very, very good series. Of course, a series that long, there's some weaker books, there's some really good books. This also establishes the common practice for Star Wars books where basically it rotates authors. So one author will write a book, the next book in the series is by a different author. So their styles vary wildly, and that's why there's some stronger books in the series compared to the other ones, depending on who the author is. But this is a series, if you're interested in reading books after the Return of the Jedi, you have to read this series. This kind of really establishes and wraps up, for lack of a better term, what the Star Wars universe is like post Return of the Jedi. You have the period after the Empire collapses where there's a little bit of chaos and things are getting established, and this series kind of establishes what the new political order is going to be. It really starts driving action on. It's really where the children of the main characters start to transition into major characters in their own right. It's a very, very good series. So even though it's a very long series, this is not a series you can really skip if you're hoping to read series set after this. If you skip this series to read shorter series after this, you'll really be lost and you really won't get the political element, the characters, the overall storyline will be a little bit of a loss at you. So New Jedi Order, definitely have to read. The Darkness Trilogy is set up to this short 3-book series. The Joiner King, the Unseen Queen, and the Swarm War. Of all the Star Wars series I've read, this is probably my least favorite. And I don't consider it essential either. So I would say this is a non-essential series that's just okay. If you're really committed to, I just want to read everything, certainly read it. It's not awful, but if for time-wise or just money-wise you don't want to buy all the books, if there's a series you're looking to skip, I would say skip this series. It's very rarely referenced in future books, so it's one you can get away with skipping, I believe. Then you have Legacy of the Force. Legacy of the Force is a very interesting series once you read it. Once you get to that point, you'll understand how it kind of mirrors actions in some of the movies. But it's a good series. I don't think it's quite as good as the new Jedi Order, but it's a pretty good series in its own right, and it is essential. And then after Legacy of the Force, you have the Fate of the Jedi. Fate of the Jedi, very good series, also essential. And that's the series they were on when the Star Wars Expanded Universe was thrown out by Disney. So when you read the Fate of the Jedi, the last book in the series, it's clearly, they finished that series, but they were clearly setting up the next series that's now just not going to happen. But it's still a great series, and I forgot to mention Legacy of the Force is about a 8 or 10 book series. Fate of the Jedi, same way. So both of those are longer series, but they're really good. I will mention there's a few standalone books. A couple standalone books I want to mention that I would definitely recommend, but you can really read them in almost any order because you won't get too lost. Millennium Falcon is a very good standalone book that kind of presents this backstory of how Han Solo came to own the Millennium Falcon and who owned the Millennium Falcon before Han and Lando did. I'd probably recommend you read that between Legacy of the Force and the Fate of the Jedi series. It makes a little bit of sense. There's a couple characters in the Millennium Falcon that if you read it before you read those series, you might be a little confused, but not so confused that you can't enjoy the plot. The other standalone book I'd recommend, in this book you can actually read anytime because it is not really, it's not post Return of the Jedi, so it's not going to mess up your reading of these series I've just mentioned, and that is Scoundrels. Scoundrels, I would almost say, is kind of like, for lack of a better term, Star Wars meets Ocean 11. It's a kind of unique story. Han Solo is the main character. Really, really good. I strongly recommend that standalone book. And I did want to reference, there is one major Star Wars series that I've never read that I know a lot of people like a lot, and that's the X-Wing series. I've heard a lot of people really love the X-Wing series. It's one of those series that I just never read. I might in the future, so I really can give my recommendations in regard to that. But those are my recommended reading list for Star Wars books. If you have any questions about that, just let me know in the comment section below. I know there are so many Star Wars books, it can get confusing, so feel free to ask me any questions in the comment section below for clarifications on any of these in my recommended order of reading. If there's any Star Wars books or series that I did not mention that you think I really should check out, let me know in the comment section below. And remember to check out that video I mentioned at the beginning of this video, where you can interact with me and give your recommendations for the channel. I definitely want to try to put content on the channel that the viewers of the channel want to see. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you the next time.